All right, moving along in our series, we just were able to get our logo to both change in position and scale, and we were able to use the previous keyframe and next keyframe in order to make those match. So what comes next? All right, we're going to practice this animation. We have another effect that we want to do on here. I want to give you a chance to actually think about it. So if you notice, this is the effect that we're trying to get to happen here. Let me turn on my highlighter here. After the 1 second, we want this Apeak logo to appear. It's coming out of invisible or 0 opacity to 100% opacity, which when it's opaque means you cannot see through it. So when our opacity is at 0, we can see through it. It's 100% transparent. So how are we going to do that using our animation keys? So first of all, we need to make sure we're on the right layer. Okay, the Apeak is the one that we want to affect. So we're going to go into our panel here and select Apeak. Now let's open that so we can figure out what we're actually going to affect. And if you notice, we have no animation keys on our Apeak turned on yet. So I'm going to use maybe I'll hold shift so that it will snap to here at 1 second where the rest of these are. And actually my timing was just a little off on here. All right, at 1 second where these are appearing and it locked into place, that's where our Apeak starts to show up. So first of all, to animate the logo, we change its position. So that was using transform. So we're going to do the same thing here using transform under Apeak. But we're not going to use position and we're not going to use scale. So we talked a little bit about using opacity. Now, that tells us what opacity does. It can create our fade, but we need to know how long it takes and where it starts. Okay, so the third hint that we have here, we have to set a starting point and an ending point. So, and then we're going to set the value. So those are the different things we're going to be changing. We're going to have our starting point at 1 second, or close to 1 second here. You can see I'm a little off. And our ending point, it looks like it takes about 1 more second. So the last thing that we need to do is move the current timeline indicator to the beginning of the peak layer and click on the stopwatch next to opacity and set it to 0. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. So I'm going to have it right here at 0. We could have it all the way back here because it's still going to be 0. Okay, so there's 0. Okay, and then we can turn on the peak there. We still want it at 0 here. Okay, so that's okay. I'm going to drop a key in there. So from here to here is 0. And now we're going to say at 2 seconds long, in this case, another second, a little bit after 2 seconds for me. I want to change. Now I don't have to hit key or anything, but I'm just going to bump this up to 100% opaque. So that means my logo should appear. And the key sets there automatically, okay? We don't turn stopwatch off. I'll show you what happens when it does. If I turn that off, all of our keys disappear, okay? It erased them all. You don't have to redo them. You can hit undo, Control Z, or up here, edit undo, and that's fine. They'll come back. But just remember that. Don't turn the stopwatch off if you want to keep those animation keys that you planted on there already. So, and if you want to manually put in a key, you click over here. So let's try it. I'm going to drag my bar back here, and there's my logo, and now my Apeak comes up from transparent up to 100% opaque. That's the effect that we're looking for, okay? And now the next thing we have is we want to add a visual effect. So I'm going to go up here and save before I go any farther. I'm going to save. I'm just going to keep it the same title here, right over it. And let's go and see what visual effects we're going to add. So we're going to do something here that we haven't done yet. We're going to select and change this and kind of blur out our background a little bit. And we're actually going to add 2 visual effects here. So I click on summer forest, and what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the effects menu because this is an effect we're adding. We're going to go down and look for blur. Blur and sharpen is here. Okay. And under blur and sharpen, I have a whole bunch of different ones. We're going to blur the whole box, which is our whole picture in this case. So we're going to go to fast box blur. Okay. And we don't see any blur yet. That's normal. Okay. We don't have to worry about that. Let's click in advance here. Now, to adjust the settings here, let me expand my panel, and we're going to adjust my settings for the blur here. So let's go down to effects. Now, if you don't have any effects on here, I could delete this off of here. Now I have no blur. Okay, so what I want you to notice is people are like, oh, I don't have that. Okay, effects only shows up here when you add an effect. So I have this selected. If I go back to my blur here, blur and sharpen, and add fast blur to there, now effect shows up. Now we want to adapt and change my fast box blur. Okay, so we want it to be clear at the beginning, and when we're at 1 second in, we want it to be blurred. Okay, so we want to find where the logo appears, which in this case is right here, and we're going to set my blur radius at 25. Okay, we can turn on our stopwatch, and we're going to set this to 25. Okay, so we're adding an animation key. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the beginning, and we're going to set, okay, we have the blur there and the background blurred, so at that second, we're going to go here and we're going to set our blur down to 0. So now if I hit play, as this comes up, it blurs the background. And by then, the reason why we wanted to blur the background is because we want the main focal point, let me undo that, to be on the logo at that time. Okay, so that's what we're doing, is we're adding the keyframes in order to do that. So it's going to walk us through that step. So blur is, and we see the 2 keys. At 1 second, blur is on. At 25, and at 0, it's off. Now, if just so we understand these keys, if I wanted to adjust the timing a little bit and have it go to 2 seconds, I could do so by sliding that effect over, and that would just slow things down a bit. Okay, but we want to keep that at 1, so I'm going to hold shift and have it snap into place there. All right, let's preview that, make sure it works. Okay, there's my blur. We're going to do one more effect here real quick before we wrap up. We're also on the same panel. We're going to add another effect. So let's go up here and we're going to go distort mirror. So here's the effects panel. Go down to distort, and we're going to go down to mirror. So that pops up a whole nother special effect here in the panel, or an FX. Okay, now if I open up mirror, okay, we can adjust those effects here in my panel. So here is my effects control panel. And what we want to do is we want to animate where this effect for the summer shows up, and we want it to come out of the middle. So let me go here and hit stop so this stops playing. I'm going to drag this back, and we have it added, but we haven't seen it yet because we haven't actually turned it on. So up here, let's go into the center. Okay, the reflection center, we're going to set that. We can click on this. This is our target tool. And I'm going to click right in the middle of where my logo is. It's represented here by a little target in the scene. I click there. Now, by not having the stopwatch turned on, it's going to make the effect apply to the entire timeline for my summer forest video. Now, if I hit play, okay, you notice that the video all comes out of the center and mirrors going both directions. That's the effect that we're looking for. And we are ready to export. All right, so how do we export? Let's come back in the next video and we will wrap things up with our export so that if you need to reference that in the future, you're golden. Thanks for joining me in today's video, and we will see you in the next one.